Shadowlands is currently expanding, retconning, and changing the lore left and right. Retcons are typically when a story is retroactively changed, and despite the negative connotation, it doesn't always have to be bad, as certain retcons can make things more clear and can add more depth to the story. So, spoilers aside, let's take a look at the top 10 retcons in the Shadowlands, focusing on the blatant changes of the original lore, to soft retcons, and even to new information intending to add more context. Brought to you by Arcade Unchained, the ultimate sandbox MMORPG, featuring 3 continents, 6 races, and 220 class combinations. While all the classical MMO features are there, such as PvP, dungeons, raids, and even world bosses, the main difference is the freedom to build your own world. You can fly, drive, and even sail. There's cars, aircraft, powerful ships, and you even have naval battles. Most interestingly, the class combinations are all playable with just one single character. Recently, the Swift Blade skill set was introduced, designed to strike from the shadows. Arcade Unchained features a brand new system, the Arc Pass. Every 3-month season, you have access to 3 different passes that take about a month to complete, with each pass split into 2 tracks with shared progression. The free versions provide all the necessary progression, while the premium ones include the cosmetic items so that there is no unfair advantage. The game is free to play until the 16th, and the price has been permanently reduced to $50.99, which is great if you want to continue playing. Also, use code AAU giveaways and get 20% discount if you purchase until the 30th of November. Number 10. Origin of the Dreadlords. This one is still not confirmed, as most of the information is based on a data mined in-game book and speculations from the community. However, originally and in the Chronicle, the Dreadlords were the most intelligent demonic beings native to the Twisted Nether and were the key members of the Legion. They were essentially the secret services of the demons. Well, with this new information, it turns out that most likely their origin is somewhere from the Shadowlands, either the Maw or Revendred, and that they're maybe not demons after all. It is even said that they didn't like the Fel, and they had to essentially pretend and force themselves to take it. Again, this hasn't been 100% confirmed, but it is possibly the biggest retcon in all of Warcraft history, and it literally changes everything in the lore and also ties into 2 other points on this list. So yeah, the Dreadlords are cunning and evil and intelligent, but they may not be demons after all. Number 9. Uther and his last words. So this one is hardly a retcon, but it does change some Warcraft 3 details. Originally, Uther said, "I dearly hope there's a special place in hell waiting for you, artists," but in the Afterlives bastion, Uther says, "Light, save my soul."
Light, save my soul.
This is, of course, a very minor thing, and the way it can be explained is that Uther said it more as a prayer to himself as opposed to talking with Arthas as he did initially. Additionally, from what we've known in Wrath of the Lich King, Uther was captured by Frostmourne and Arthas kept his soul. However, the Afterlives short shows us that his soul was split into 2 pieces, one that went to Bastion and the other was trapped within Frostmourne. The reason why Uther was so vengeful and why he threw Arthas into the Maw was because his soul was split and he wasn't really his own self. Now, while this isn't strictly a retcon, it is an additional bit of information that adds a lot more depth to Uther and his character. Number 8. Spirit Healers. The Spirit Healers are one of the most iconic beings in all of Warcraft. Even if you played since the classic, you've definitely seen them. For a long time, they were mainly a game mechanic. They didn't really have much of a backstory, but with the Chronicle, they finally got some new lore. Initially, Odin opposed the creation of the dragon aspects and decided to split away from the rest of the Titan Keepers. Odin transformed Helia into the first Valkyr and forced her to bring back warriors to the Halls of Valor. As the Halls of Valor was sealed and Helia split away from Odin, it was said that the Valkyr that didn't follow her or Odin were the Spirit Healers. The Spirit Healers would disappear into the Shadowlands and would guide the dead back to the realm of the living. Overall, this lore was very confusing, as it wasn't clear what exactly was their purpose, why were they doing this, and why were they even independent in the first place. Well, it turns out that the Shadowlands entirely scrapped that story, and the Spirit Healers are in fact Kyrian. They are the so-called Watchers, and they evaluate souls. If they deem a soul ready for death, they call upon the Kyrian Bearer that brings the soul to the Shadowlands, and if the soul isn't ready, they bring it back to life. While this entirely changes the original story, honestly, the updated version makes a lot more sense. Number 7. The Cosmology. As Shadowlands hasn't been released yet, it is hard to actually say what exactly has been changed, but it is almost certain that the cosmology and the lore around the universe and the origin is either gonna expand or it is gonna change a lot. Previously, magic was relatively simple in the lore, then Chronicle added this famous cosmology chart and added a ton of new information. Before, it was believed that that was somehow related to the Void, but we've learned that it is a separate thing, and also Shadowlands as a realm was first introduced with the Chronicle. However, with the current progression, it seems like there is a lot more behind the Dead Realms, that the Titans are not the first beings, and that the Warlords are not so black and white. We've learned about the Eternal Ones, or the Pantheon of Death, which one of the most notable members is obviously the Jailer, but there are also the First Ones, which are ancient godlike figures that are even older than the Eternal Ones. This retcon process has been happening for like the past 10 years, first with soft retcons and expansions of the current knowledge, but Shadowlands will no doubt offer some more concrete information. Number 6. Scourge Architecture. In the original lore, there was the War of the Spider. Ner'zhul began to spread his influence as he was created by Kil'jaeden across Northrend and eventually ran across the old god creations, the Nerubians. So far, this was the toughest nut to crack, and the Nerubians offered a fierce resistance. Ultimately, however, the Lich King prevailed and he had conquered and enslaved his enemies. Now, he was impressed by their technological advancement and architecture and decided to implement as much of it as possible into his own army, which is how we got the Ziggurats and the like. Now, in the Shadowlands, we learned that the Scourge was in fact inspired by Maldraxxus and its own architecture, and in a way, much of the Scourge is like a mini Maldraxxus on Azeroth. This, in my opinion, is just a blatant retcon, and I can't really see any way to explain it. Nerubians, as far as we know, are old god creations related to the Void, and the Void isn't directly linked to Maldraxxus, so with the current information that we have, I really can't see a way to link Nerubians, the Scourge, and the Shadowlands. Number 5. Shadowlands. The Shadowlands itself are essentially just one large, massive retcon. Originally, in the lore, it was believed that the Twisting Nether was the afterlife, which is evident by Scarlet Crusaders telling you to prepare yourself to see the Twisting Nether, as well as various characters dying in-game and exclaiming that the Twisting Nether awaits them. Later on, this was retconned with the Chronicle to be the realm where the magics coalesce and the home to the demons, and the Shadowlands as we know them were first introduced. Still, it was nonetheless almost a complete mystery. We just heard about the Shadowlands, but we knew nothing, and now the new expansion has changed everything completely. While not strictly a retcon, in my opinion, just the fact that the Shadowlands even exist and that there is no death like a permanent one, but a life and a world after death changes everything we had ever done. No death on Azeroth is the same, it kinda loses a lot of its significance, and from what it seems, the material plane is really not all that important. Number 4. Edge of Night. A very soft retcon, but quite a significant one to the progression of the entire story. Originally, in the Edge of Night, the short story, Sylvanas threw herself off the frozen throne as Arthas was defeated, as she saw no purpose in her life anymore. She floated in a dark void of terror and fear, even saw Arthas, and was saved by the Valkyr who she made a pact with in order to save her people and in order to offer the Valkyr refuge. However, now with the Shadowlands, we know that those Valkyr were actually working for the Jailer. She entered the mall, and this was the point when she made the infamous pact. From that point forward, Sylvanas' purpose wasn't to protect her people, to really care about the Forsaken, but to create chaos in order to strengthen the Jailer and to help break the Machine of Death, as well as to get rid of Bolvar. While this didn't necessarily 100% retcon the story, it is more of a case that it expanded it and added a lot more depth to the lore we already knew. Additionally, it also turned this sort of an irrelevant moment to one of the most key moments in all of Warcraft history. Number 3. Legion created the Lich King. This is related to the Dreadlords, but this is actually one of the most drastic retcons that shook Warcraft to the core. Originally, it was Kil'jaeden that thought of the Lich King, and together with the Dreadlords, they crafted the Helm of Domination and Frostmourne in order to create the Scourge to soften up Azeroth for the upcoming demonic invasion. Now, None of that is truly retconned, but the story has just changed drastically, almost completely. We found out that it was the Dreadlords that work for someone in the Shadowlands, most likely the jailer, and that the armor belongs to the jailer as it originates from the Maw. This means that not only were we played, but so was the Legion, as they believe the Dreadlords, who just use their immense resources for their own plans, as for what it seems like they've been plotting on creating conflict between the various forces in the universe for thousands of years. Nothing is confirmed yet, at least 100%, and while the Legion still did do something with the Lich King, now we know who truly was behind the creation and what was the true purpose of the Lich King. Number 2. ARDENWEALD and the Emerald Dream. Emerald Dream has always been a very mysterious thing, and since the start of Warcraft we've only known bits and pieces about the place. I honestly think that even Blizzard, even now, doesn't even know what this place is. Emerald Dream is supposed to be the nature's blueprint for Azeroth, and until recently we've thought that the Guardians went to the Dream to regain power, but it turns out, as we have seen with the Afterlives and Ursoc, that they go to Ardenweald where their souls are placed in pots. How much of this is a retcon, it is really hard to tell yet, since the expansion hasn't even been released. However, the fact that they go to the Emerald Dream or Ardenweald might not be changed, as apparently the two are linked. It is said that the Dream is the spring and the summer cycle of life, while Ardenweald is the autumn and winter. This obviously means that the Emerald Dream and the Shadowlands are interlinked and possibly even directly connected. More interestingly, as Chronicle states that Freya created the Emerald Dream, this could have huge implications for the lore. Either they just completely retcon this bit, or the Titans have had a connection with the Shadowlands and managed to connect the two. And lastly, number 1, the Burning Crusade. This is probably the biggest retcon so far, and it isn't even strictly related to the Shadowlands. If anyone remembers, in the original lore, it was the Dreadlords that corrupted and made the Titan crazy, which is why he started his infamous Burning Crusade. Then, Chronicle retconned that by explaining that the Void Lords are here and how it was knowledge of them that drove him towards insanity. Now, the current, most likely story, and I say most likely because at this point it is only based on beta mine information, is that the Dreadlords are working for the Shadowlands and did actually corrupt Sargeras and have driven him to create the Burning Legion. While this isn't completely a retcon, it is sort of a full circle back to the original, long retcon storyline. Dreadlords knew that the Titans are easy to corrupt, and all they had to do was show them someone that is complete opposite to Order and their purpose, which is obviously the Void. So they didn't even do that much, they just guided Sargeras to insanity essentially. However, we've learned that this has been a plan, a directive directly from the Shadowlands for many millennia, and these guys have been working on creating conflict across the cosmology chart, most likely to strengthen the Shadowlands and the Jailer. Thank you for watching. Check out the top 10 strongest headlines by clicking on the screen, and also check out Dorons's Academy for videos on real world history and science. See you next time.